What's the most common cause for network failures, hardware or application? Well, that's easy. It's applications. Unless you ask an application person and they say it's hardware. See how simple that question is to be able to do? Oh, wow. The most common cause for network failures. There's not a common. Everybody tries to put redundancy in place to have these. It's hard to have an application redundancy, but we really try to do that these days with load balancers. As we saw during the study group, I have a Cloudflare configuration on mine. Let's see if I can show you some of this. So if you're trying to figure out how these companies do this stuff, how are they able to have multiple devices and redundancies and all of those pieces with this? Well, I use a service called Cloudflare to be able to do that, which is effectively a reverse proxy. So reverse proxies are used to be able to take a request, and Cloudflare grabs your request and it makes the request to my web server and then presents the results back to you. And the benefits I have from that are many. One of the big benefits is that I'm able to cache a lot of information at Cloudflare. So I pay them a little bit of money. They cache all of this. So when you make a request, you get a response back quickly. It may not even go to my web server for that response. Takes a load off the server, gives you information faster. That's a win-win. I'm willing to pay somebody money for that. That's fantastic. And so Cloudflare is my front end to this, where it goes through, and you can see there's a lot of information. Not only is it providing that caching and that redundancy, because there's multiple front ends. We saw that when we did the NS lookup. A lot of people in the chat were saying, I got a completely different IP address. Yep, you got a different Cloudflare IP address depending on where you are in the world. So that provides me also with some geographical flexibility of where you happen to be, which is fantastic. It does provide a nice security piece. Dave is mentioning in the chat room because, and here it is, since you mentioned security, I'm able to look at the data inside of these packets before they come to me, and I'm able to make a determination at Cloudflare, is this a member of a botnet? So there's signatures that are already built into Cloudflare to look for these known vulnerabilities. So if a botnet tries to hit the Professor Messer website from a particular IP address, here they are. Here's devices that are infected with botnets. These devices may not even know they're infected with botnets. What Cloudflare does, it puts up a separate screen. And sometimes you may get this on your screen that says, we're not so sure that you're a real person. So here's a CAPTCHA, which is those funny little squiggly words you have to now type into a screen. And if you type those in and hit okay, you get access. You're a real person. Sorry, thought you were a botnet. Sorry, my bad. Maybe your IP address was associated with a botnet. Maybe it's from a location that's infected with a botnet. Before that session, I can challenge you and then allow or disallow. This particular person, we presented a CAPTCHA. They did not pass it. They got blocked, that botnet zombie. And I'm able to get details about that IP address. For that IP address range, this is really cool. I'm able to see all of the different IP addresses around that range and things that have been seen bad from that IP address range. I can look at details for that particular device. If I'm happen to grab agent information, botnets generally don't have user agents in the HTTP headers. And if I look at the IP address, I can see these are international addresses. I'd have to go to RIPE, which is the International Association handling addresses, I think, for Europe. So I'd have to go out to RIPE to get the list of what those 77 addresses are. It does say that 77 addresses are from the Russian Federation. And I've already got configured inside of my Cloudflare that if anything's coming from the Russian Federation or coming from China, I just drop it. Way too much noise from those, and they wouldn't understand anything I was saying anyway. So once this hits Cloudflare, I actually have more infrastructure behind the scenes. There is a lot of great capabilities there. So the question in the chat room was, Cloudflare have over Google Analytics? Cloudflare is my front end. Everybody has to hit Cloudflare before they come to me. Google Analytics is a reporting of who hit me once they finally got there. So Analytics is an after the fact. Cloudflare is immediate. You don't even talk to my web servers unless you talk to Cloudflare. So it's a fantastic service that I have. And I have control over how I can do things with the data. And if I'm worried about if anything goes wrong, I can click a button, it goes around it. It's quite a lot of flexibility to be able to do those pieces of it. Now, what happens after this is Cloudflare says, okay, that's legitimate traffic. let me send that to Professor Messer. And it really sends it to one IP address. I have a load balancer in my configuration, and behind the load balancer, I have multiple web servers. So the load balancer decides and spreads out the load between my multiple web servers. Those multiple web servers talk back to a central database server, because a lot of what I do on my server doesn't involve a lot of database transactions. So I just only need one of those, at least right now. Later on, I could also add multiple database servers. So somebody asked earlier, what's this cloud give me? Anytime I want a new server, I click a button. Poof, new server pops up. I say, that's my new web server. Here's the IP address. I tell all the other servers, new web server, new database server, new server that I'm doing for something, and I can point them over there. It's brilliant. Yes, Cloudflare is providing IPS functionality. See, this network plus stuff is sinking in. You're getting it. That is the IPS functionality, looking at a signature, identifying known vulnerabilities within the signature, and blocking them right there. That's exactly what an intrusion prevention system is supposed to be. Yes, Benny, Cloudflare is a reverse proxy, because I'm on the inside and everybody's coming to me on that piece. It's effectively different than somebody's using a proxy and going out to the internet, and you're protecting a lot of different people from a server on the internet. I'm protecting my servers from a lot of people on the internet. That's a reverse proxy, but a proxy nonetheless for those pieces. So that's where I get a lot of metrics from this. I get a lot of analytics you probably saw already. So this is all the analytics of everybody hitting me, and then I can compare that to my Google Analytics, because I'm running Google Analytics on my server as well, to get an idea of how much traffic was regular, how much was crawlers, how much was threats. Look at the big chunk of threats. 8% of total traffic yesterday on my web server was threats. And now I've defined threats also as data from China and from the Russian Federation for those known IP addresses. That's a pretty big number, and that's why I block them, because it's a mess. The entire Professor Messer infrastructure is, I don't know what Cloudflare is doing. I imagine that's hardware, but everything past that point is completely virtualized, yes. Or at least virtualized to a degree. I think my load balancers may be a piece of hardware with virtualized load balancers inside of it. Load balancers are a little bit different than a router or switch. They have a different type of inner workings there. And I'm not sure exactly what my provider, I'm using Rackspace, but my Rackspace uses a particular virtualized load balancer that they can put many customers on. So that's probably a physical box that does have it's effectively a virtual load balancer, because I can click and load up another load balancer. I can click and load up another load balancer. So I have kind of hidden my IP address from the world. You really don't know what my IP address is. And really, the only IP address you'd see is up the load balancer, but even you don't see that. The IP address you see is Cloudflare. But if I wanted to change my IP address, I can click a button, load up another load balancer, tell Cloudflare, use that load balancer now, and everybody moves over. That's brilliant. That's fantastic. And I've done that. In a minute or two, I've clicked a button. 5 minutes later, Cloudflare was pointing everybody to a new device. That simple. Really, really useful to have that there. So chat room, boy, we went off on a tangent on that question though, didn't we? It's kind of how the study groups work though. Let's go back to our list of questions since we're here. Get that piece. How are we doing in the chat room? Can you tell me if I have an unknown botnet lurking on your network? Well, I could. If the botnet was talking to me and I knew your IP address, I could absolutely tell you if one was. That's Cloudflare will tell me. And you're talking to me and I see it come through, I can absolutely. Unknown botnets are even they can be more challenging to find, but there's absolutely technology out there in the world where even unknown botnets can be identified very quickly, less than an hour, if not immediately, based on how the botnet is working, what it's sending, the type of information it sends out. And being able to see that, the latest generation of firewalls is really made for that type of understanding into the layer 7, into the application. And traffic from a botnet, wait, that's not a web traffic. That's not Skype. That's not somebody doing Facebook. That's unusual. Maybe I should block that one. I've been in the industry since college. So just a couple years, really, because I'm just a young kid. And when I was at Florida State University, I worked in their supercomputer center as an operator, where I cut my teeth on large-scale computing, I guess. And by cut my teeth, I meant put a lot of tapes into tape drives and pull a lot of printouts off of a printer. So it's been now 25 years, somewhere in there. So quite a few years. I'm 40 something. So yeah, it's since college. So I just love computing. My college degree was actually in management. I didn't take a lot of technical courses. I took maybe an introduction to, at the time it was called MIS, Management Information Systems. I didn't do any programming classes. No, that's not true. I think I did 2 programming classes because you had to get that management degree, because they realized back then, hey, this computer thing might really take off. So we should probably have that as part of the curriculum. So whether they do, they taught me how to program in Pascal. Not kidding. That was the curriculum. If you're getting a business degree, you should know how to program in Pascal. And it's great. Any type of programming you do, I don't care what you do, whether it's Pascal, whether it's Java, whether it's JavaScript, which are 2 different things, look them up, whether it's C++, whether it's basic programming. I don't care what you do. Programming has a logic and a thought process associated with it. So if you say, somebody's saying you really should learn Perl or Ruby or C++, some people tell you, don't learn Perl, that's stupid. Don't learn C++, that's hard. It's just, it doesn't matter which one it is. Don't listen to them. Just go out and see what you can learn about it. What's that site I keep telling people to go through? Yes, Cobalt, not Cobalt, Cobol. That's another one that I didn't have to take COBOL, but my associates who were in the management information systems had to learn that as well. Those poor folks. Cobalt's is it an element or is it just a mineral? I did a year of engineering. I started as an electrical engineering major, and I went to classes, had no idea what these people were talking about. And it just wasn't for me. It wasn't my thing. So I got out of that and went to management. So that's how that worked out. Plus, it was useful because there were girls taking marketing classes, not a lot of girls taking engineering classes. So that was probably driving me. I didn't have, when I worked in the computing center, to Raul's point, they had just transferred out all of the punch cards. That's the timing for me. So we used the punch cards as note cards because you had a lot of them left over. Nobody was using them. Everything was on tape at that point. So I was mounting, for you old schoolers, 6250 BPI, bits per inch tape onto big tape drives on CDC mainframes, Controlled Data Corporation mainframes. It was a treat. And we used not only the CDC mainframes, but the Plato system, the educational system for those mainframes. This was very similar to where I worked. Thank you, Wikipedia. In the back, you can see these tape drives. There's me. I didn't even have hair in college. Really? This is not me, but this could have been this same room. I was a college kid. They had the real people working operations during the week. I was the kid who came in after hours, nighttime, weekends, and holidays just to hold down the fort. And they had these big tape drives, and you shove the tape on, and you push some buttons, and a window comes up, and it sucks the tape, and it rolls. It was the coolest thing ever. Coolest thing ever. Right here, this big black thing that this guy is sitting in front of, that's a printer. That whole thing is a chain printer. There's a chain that spins around inside of the printer. And as it's spinning around, there's a hammer that punches at the right time to put the right text onto the page. And the ribbons were these enormous ribbons, because it's a big printer. You're removing these enormous ribbons and sticking them onto that. Oh, wow. It brings back some pretty awful memories. It wasn't awful. It was fun. I mean, I was a geek. I was into this computing stuff, and they would leave me in the room alone with the mainframes all weekend. This was like paradise. Are you kidding? These are the mainframe consoles right here. This big screen, this big green screen with a keyboard that didn't even have an enter button on it. I wish I could find this. These are the hard drives that this nice lady's putting in a new pack or removing a pack of hard drives. These are probably, I don't know, these might be 10 meg, 5 meg, 20 meg drives, megabyte drives. The mainframe was not a it was not a decimal mainframe. It was octal. Did everything in octal. So, memory like the corners of. There you go. Well, how did I get on that? How did we get to that topic? Network, because somebody asked what the common cause was for network failures. Of course, that's how we got to that. Okay. What else did we talk about? Other questions that came in. Why are there so many network protocols? I feel you. Boy, why are there so many network protocols? Because we're never able to really get a consensus. Human beings are human beings, and OSPF does different things than RIP version 2, does different things than EIGRP, does different things than BGP. It just does. That's just how it is. So there's different protocols for everybody, and you have to know them. But don't think of this as a disadvantage. Think of this as an advantage. This is where your value comes in. This is where you're going to get more money because you know more advanced things than anybody else does. That's how we work in this world. So very, very nice to have that knowledge. And the more you know about this technology, and as you just saw, you have to keep learning it, because my skills at operating a chain printer and a console on a CDC 755 mainframe are pretty limited at this point. Can't do much with those skills, but I did learn about how people were using these mainframes. A guy would come in on the weekend with this big plot. I would take a plot off a plotter. There was what they call an electrostatic plotter that would plot out these enormous, I don't know, they must have been 3 or 4 feet wide, big pieces of I believe it was thermal paper. And they got very, very, this is well before laser printers were around. They got very precise drawings from these enormous electrostatic printers. And they were, at that point, using these mainframes to figure out where hurricanes were going. So all of their plotting and things that they were doing about how hurricanes worked. There was a huge supercomputer at Florida State that was cooled with liquid nitrogen called the ETA-1, that all they did was crunch those types of number crunching types of applications. And I learned from there that there was a computer there, and it was a mainframe, and I had tapes, and there were printouts on the printer. And this guy would walk in and he'd say, "Oh yeah, we're doing this calculation. We're trying to figure out, because I'm in Florida. I'm very interested in hurricanes." He says, "There's a hurricane out here right now. We think it's going to go this way, but we're computing a new model that we think it's going to go this way." And I started making the link together that said, this actually does something. This big device that's full of ones and zeros, that if you open it up is just a wall of wires, literally. This actually can do some really, really amazing things that might actually save people's lives, because you're able to tell them a hurricane's heading straight for you. It'll be there in 3 days. Get out of there right now. That's pretty awesome. That's where I got hooked. And that's where I realized I'm going to get this management degree, but I'm going to really work with computers. That's really what I'm going to do. And that's where all of this really got going. So I got my management degree. First job I got was at a computer store in South Miami. And that's another story for another time. I think my favorites is networking, Benny. I think networking's really, when I first saw a sniffer, a Network General sniffer, it was plugged into a token ring network at a insurance company that I worked at. And I plugged in networks, and I used the Novell commands to map drives and transfer files, but I didn't know what was going on at the wire level. And they plugged in and they said, "Here's the wire." The devices at that time, as traffic went across, made a Geiger counter kind of noise. And as the network traffic got busier, it got louder. There was more Geiger counter noises. And that is one of those things that you see it and you're like, you can see it. You can actually see the communication, the packets going back and forth. There's the server acknowledging that it received that information. Whoa. That was another one of those milestones when I said, okay, I need to know everything about that right there. That's awesome. And the rest is me just trying to figure it out from that point on. I'm still trying to figure it out. Somebody asked what certification I take this week. I'm not saying, but it was a lot of networking. It's a lot of networking. So that was 20 years ago. I'm still trying to learn stuff about networking. So that should give you an idea of the longevity you'll have in getting into this particular piece of the world. We talked about IPv6, IPv4. We talked about, I haven't done subnetting in a while, and I really need to. A lot of people ask about subnetting. It's such a small piece of the Network Plus certification, but it can be used forever. It's one of those things that you'll learn about PPP, you'll learn about IPsec, and you'll learn about these different capabilities. But one that you'll always need to know is subnetting. So I really need to do maybe all subnetting study group. That's not a bad idea, actually. I should have an all subnetting study group. I have to think about that. How would I do that? I'd want to show you the binary, but of course, the binary I show you for Network Plus is really so you get the idea of how it works. There's much faster ways to do subnetting. You should be able to do a subnetting question in 15 seconds. It asks you, how many hosts on this subnet, on this IP address with this subnet mask? Go. You should be able to figure it out instantly. And when I'm on my, I'm taking these exams that I take, I have a chart that I write out. You have time, you can write out things before the exam. And you should do this for your Network Plus too. There's things you are stuck in your head. You just want to get them out there. You can write them down on that sheet of paper. In fact, next one I take, I'm going to take my own pen, my own erasable whiteboard marker, because they gave me one that's really designed to go in front of a classroom with a big fat tip on it. And I'm trying to write these very precise, 10 to the 2 to the 1, 2 to the 2, 2 to the 3 type charts. So I've got my chart 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1. Got them listed out, and they're big, fat, ugly marks. I'm thinking I'm going to see that 0 and think it's an 8 or something. Then the nice lady who was there, I said, do you have anything that's finer than this? And she found me one that was a lot better, but I might want to take my own next time. There's a study tip. Bring your own dry erase marker. You're never going to hear that one anywhere else. That I think would be very useful to do. Mine wasn't a dry erase board. It was a laminated page that would not sit flat. It was curved. So the whole time I'm holding it down with one hand and I'm trying to draw because I lift it up and it boing, pops back up. So lift it down with the other and get it all written. Oh, took me long enough. Mentimeter, the metering, the polling system that we use would be a good one to use for subnetting, wouldn't it? I could just do a bunch of subnet questions. That'd be awesome. That's what we should do. Yeah, some things you'll just start to get because you use them so much. Every time you see, oh, this is a /30, you immediately think wide area network because that is a network that only supports 2 hosts. If you don't talk about the later RFC, we're not talking about RFC, it's just generally 2 hosts. So you get this in your mind every time you see a /30, it's an automatic process. At that insurance company I talked about, our subnet was 255, 255, 255, 192. To this day, I remember the Class B address it was based on because it's embedded in my brain. I know exactly where those are. It's 62 hosts per network. I know exactly the 64, 128, 192, 256. I know exactly the breaks. And in my head, I can, boom, do that. That's water. It's not coffee. I'm like this all the time without coffee. So you get to where some of those become automatic. But when you're in an exam, you double check yourself all the time. You're double guessing yourself. Like, I know I've been doing this for 20 years, but is it really 255.192? I don't remember. And it's nice to have the chart there as a sanity check. And I use the chart every time. I go to that and use the chart, done. Use the chart, I'm done. 15 seconds, less than 15 seconds every time. If you can't get it down that fast, you need to do something else. You need to use another method to figure out your calculations. But I should really make a note, a picture. I should draw it out and make a picture of here's the chart I use. Where's my chart? Got a chart. What am I saying? I need a picture. I got it right here. On a piece of paper, there's my chart. Can't even see it. Can't see. It's too bright. Too bright. There you go. That's my chart. That's it. That's all you need. And I even write out the bottom. Did I write on the right side? I even wrote out the 16, the 32, 16, 8 view. So I can really look at and see my 8 times tables, 16 times tables, 32, those factors of those different segmentations. There's a great picture somebody had because I was studying for this certification, so I just would use the sheet all the time to do what I need to do. And if you have just this information, and if you also do that, I don't have the eights written out on here, but if I take out and do the factors of 8 onto that page, you got everything you need. Factors of 4 kind of be easier to figure out. Really, factors of 8 should be easy to figure out as well. But okay, people, I can't do this in a test. I'm under pressure. There's not enough time. I like to have it written out. I think everybody should write that stuff out. So there you go. That's how you answer the question of whatever it was that somebody asked. There are questions on here. I'm apparently ignoring them. I'm just answering whatever answer I want to answer. What piece of advice would you give someone ready to take their Network Plus test? Okay. If you watch the videos, because I'm self-serving, but I think they're good. I think I spent a lot of time on these videos putting every single bit of information from the objectives into the videos. I tried to match it up and not give you too much and not limit you on certain things. I tried to make it just right. But get a book to go along with it, because the book fills in the gaps. A written piece of information can put a lot more detail into a much smaller place than you can in a video. Video is a different way to learn. It's a visual form of learning, but it limits you as to the amount of information I can shove into your eyeballs and into your ear sockets. There's only so much I can fit in a certain amount of time. When you read, you can read much faster than listening to somebody talk. I'd have to read really, really fast to be able to get that across to you. I can't talk that fast, so nobody will understand what I'm saying. So I have to talk slower on a video. So get a good book, a good guide. A lot of people like some guides that are all-in-one guides. I tend to tell people to stay away from those. The same authors make some that are not all-in-one guides. They are guides that are passport guides, or the dummies guide, or the just enough to get your exam done guide. Now, the all-in-one guides are still great books, but you're going to learn everything there is to know about that particular topic, well beyond what you would need to know for the exam. But if you have an all-in-one guide, they're great books. They make great reference tools after the fact. You can use them for other exams you're planning to take. Also get a good Q&A guide. I talked about the freestyle stuff today, and they have some good sample tests, sample questions. There is also a series of books for the Network Plus. I don't think they have one for the N10005. The Exam Cram practice question book for N10005. Is there such a thing? There's not. The Exam Cram people, for some reason, I can't find one that is. They have a series of books that are, here's a book that you can use to get your certification that goes to the topics. They have some books that are practice questions books, where it's nothing but questions. That's a great book. In the A Plus, they have one. I think they also have one on Security Plus. I was looking for a Network Plus, couldn't find it. So if somebody finds one or knows of one, I should probably just go to, I think Pearson's the manufacturer, the publisher of that, should probably just look to see if they have that. But the questions that are in your books can be very useful as well. Many of these books, and here's a problem I've run into, and it's frustrating, is that the books are made by a certain publisher. There's usually in a physical book a DVD-ROM that's in the back of the book. And the DVD-ROM sometimes will have a copy of the book on it, but it also has software that is a sample set of questions. They might have 200 questions in this software as a sample test. The software is made by a third party, and the third party doesn't allow the publisher to give people that information unless they bought the physical book. Drives me crazy because I like to use a Kindle. I travel all the time. I'm on a plane. I'm in a hotel room. I'm not carrying a book. I'm not carrying a big book for studying. I'm carrying the Kindle. But if I buy the Kindle version, I might save $5. It might even be the same price. I don't get the sample software. I don't get the sample questions. What's up, publishers? Figure that out. That needs to be fixed. That's a mess because you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. The lawyers don't want that to happen. There's rights and permissions issues. Fine, I'll go to the publisher of the software directly if I have to. It's the internet. All of these boxes are connected. I don't know if anyone's mentioned that to you yet. Have the lawyers figure that piece out because I need access to that software. But get some software or get a book. Has a lot of good sample questions in there. Those three things. Go to your objectives, use it as a checklist, get a book, watch the videos, do some questions. You'll be fine. There's my question. There's my recommendation for you to be able to do that. Okay, I'm out of voice. I am out of time. It's time for lunch. There's a burger in my future. Thanks everybody for joining, for being part of this crazy ride, this crazy experience. Thanks so much for the things that you do for these study groups. I would not be able to do these study groups unless you were handing me these questions and giving me some ideas and telling me what we should do with those pieces. So it's incredible help to me. There are, of course, more things to talk about next month. So feel free. I'll have this replay up. Hopefully, I don't have last week's A+ up yet. So I hope that I will get all of this editing done by tonight and post it either this evening or we'll get it done tomorrow. But I'll get this one up very, very, very quickly. Yes, that exam cram that you've posted is not the exam cram practice questions. There's not exam cram practice questions. You're looking for the word practice questions. That's what you need to find. I don't think you'll find one, unfortunately. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a part of this. Thanks for your questions throughout the month, the ones you sent in for this. We'll see you next time. Thanks.